Hi cuties, my name is Hanako Kozumi and this is the channel Nerdy Nekoma. Everything here is about Haikyuu chat stories and fanfic. Thanks for joining us today. If you like this video, please consider subscribing and leaving a like. And with that, welcome to today's video. This is a BokuAkaKuroKen angst video, so if you know that you don't handle angst well, maybe do not watch it, that's completely fine. There's no specific content warnings, but it gets really angsty all in general and there are some serious injuries, so please be aware of that. Now, let's jump straight into the video and I hope you like it. Ice cold drops of rain fell on his skin and ran down his back. It was a stark contrast to his tears burning like acid. The freezing wind cut into his flesh and knocked the hood off his hat. Not that it mattered. He was in a trance, walking on and on without a clear destination in mind. Everything was fine as long as he got away from there. Just away. He startled. With every step, the weight on his shoulders seemed to become heavier, and he had to force his shaking limbs to move. There was a ringing in his ears, drowning out all the noise around him. Everything seemed to blend together. Blurry lights flickered in his vision, rain mixed with tears, and even though his eyes were wide open, it seemed as though darkness was tugging at the seams. Part of him wanted to give in to the void, threatening to take his consciousness with it. To just escape into cold and dark nothing, dreamless sleep and peaceful unconsciousness. To just run away from everything by giving up, giving in to the voice whispering broken promises into his ear. Even though he couldn't hear the things around him clearly, and everything was separated by walls of water falling in heavy streams from the clouds, it was still too much. The world around him seemed to drown in the rain, and a growing void lingered within dark corners and abandoned alleys. And Kenma almost awaited the moment in which the water would fill up his lungs, so that he could finally rest. But he continued walking, too exhausted to run, always away from the lights and the few that dared to leave their homes in this storm. Until, finally, he reached an empty park. There were no streetlights illuminating the dark. And when he sat down underneath a big cherry tree on the muddy ground, hugging his knees tightly, it finally felt like he could breathe again. The tree did little to nothing to stop the rain from pouring down on him. His hair was sticky against his head, and the hoodie he was wearing was soaked from the rain. All his clothes were. He wasn't wearing a jacket or coat of any kind, just a t-shirt, the hoodie, and pajama pants. But now that he was alone, with nothing around him that could hurt him, everything was fine. His breath calmed. His heart stopped feeling like it wants to escape his ribcage, and after a while, he was even able to form coherent thoughts again. The latter, however, proved to be quite the opposite of helpful. New tears ran down his cheeks and mixed with the raindrops. He looked up to the sky and just allowed them to fall. What was he even doing here? Where even was he here? The blonde took another shaky breath, while his eyes fixated on the raindrops gathering on one of the leaves before falling. In this storm, it happened incredibly fast, but somehow it still felt soothing. As long as he watched, there was no need to think. Not about what happened. Not about what was happening. Not about what is going to happen. Just a steady flow of raindrops. He couldn't allow himself to drift away, to give in to the voice that lulled him to sleep. But He could distract himself by just watching. Tetsu? Ken? We are back! Bokuto opened his arms widely in hopes one of his boyfriends would greet him at the door. Akashi gently nudged him in the side and answered his confused expression with a tender smile. Ko, it's already pretty late. The lights are all turned off, so they are most likely sleeping. Oh, right. He immediately lowered the volume of his voice and pulled Akashi to his side instead, placing a soft kiss on his temple. The ravenet giggled. Come on, we should go to bed as well. He startled. There on the couch stood a familiar figure, hunched over and barely moving. He turned on the lights. Tetsu? No reply. Hey, Tetsuro, what are you still doing down here? Is Kenma streaming or something? I messed up. His voice was strained and the words sounded broken. It hit the others straight in their hearts. Tetsu, he effed up. He effed him so bad. I'm sorry. His body was trembling, and Akashi noticed the tears soaking the sleeves of his shirt. Tetsuro! Bokuto rushed over to him without thinking and engulfed him in a tight hug. The other tried to push him away weakly before collapsing against his chest and crying into Bokuto's shirt. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Please. The ace just hugged him tighter and started to soothingly rub his back. Shh. We got you. Akashi sat down next to Kuroo and gently took his hand, which was still laying limp on his thigh. It's alright. Calm down. And whatever it is, I'm sure that we can fix it. No, Shh. Don't worry about that now. Just don't think about it. Kuroo complied by just continuing to cry until the sobs subsided. Akashi and Bokuto exchanged a worried glance over his shoulder. Seeing Kuroo break down was rare, even after they became more open with each other. He and Kenma both had the unhealthy habit of bottling it all up. And whenever things were surfaced, the trigger was most likely connected to one of them. In a way, they both were pretty much alike when it came to these kinds of things. It wasn't surprising since they are childhood best friends and grew up together. It resulted in separation anxiety that was borderline unhealthy codependency. If Kuroo was in such a bad state, the reason had almost certainly something to do with Kenma. Tetsu, one by one, can you tell us what happened? Kenma and I... we fought. Akashi squeezed his hand reassuringly. It's all my fault. I had a bad day and was frustrated. And when I came home and he didn't even greet me or wanted to spend time with me. He took a deep breath in a vain attempt to calm himself. I lost it. His voice broke. It's okay. We can figure this out, remember? Akashi smiled at him encouragingly. I said that... The shaking increased again. I said that he loved his games more and that if he didn't care, I wouldn't either. Akashi hugged him from the side. Knowing Kenma and Kuroo, this was only part of the story, but the older often insisted to take the blame for everything. Another very unhealthy habit. Don't worry, you two just need some time to cool down a bit and then we can talk about everything and resolve this. No. Yes, we did this before and we can do this again. I will check up on him. He's not here. A moment of silence occurred as Kashi and Bokuto tried to process what he just said. What do you mean by that? He's not here. He left after we fought. Said that he didn't want to stay if... Okay, shh. Calm down, we got this. Yes, we are going to find him. He is most likely on his way to Hinata. Yeah, sounds reasonable. I'll call him and ask if he's there. How long ago did he leave? Koda's muscles tensed, and he clenched Akashi's hand slightly. A few hours ago. Good. Then he's probably there already. Bokuto held Kuroo close, consistently patting his back and occasionally placing soft kisses on his hair. It's going to be alright. It always was, and this time is no different. But I messed up so badly. Please don't hate me. What? Bokuto kneeled down in front of him. Tetsu, I don't hate you. I could never. And Kenma doesn't either. A strangled sob escaped Kuroo's throat. I don't know what happened, but I know that. You might have messed up, but you would never hurt any one of us intentionally, and Kenma knows that as well. The ravenet's head slumped against Bokuto's neck. Something inside of the taller broke as he saw just how hurt and scared his boyfriend was in this very moment. Whatever happened, it was a trigger. The ace hugged him tighter. You and Kenma are going to calm down a bit and then we can fix this. Kuroo nodded weakly against his neck and Bokuto sighed in relief. They could do this. Kataro! Yeah, Kenma isn't at Hinata's. Immediately Kuroo's head snapped up and he stared with wide eyes at Akashi. Maybe Yaku's. Akashi shook his head frantically. I called everyone I could think of. No one has seen him. Bokuto's heartbeat accelerated. No one? No. They became more and more worried. New tears formed in Kuroo's eyes. Suddenly, he got up, determinedly walking towards the door. Wait, we can't just run out there without a plan. I have a plan. Finding Kenma. Kuroo was prepared to argue with them, but when he turned around, Akashi as well as Bokuto were putting on their shoes. I know, but we should take different directions so that we can cover more ground. However, it's really stormy outside, so everybody turns on their location. We need to be able to find each other in case of an emergency. If Kenma just ran outside, he most likely got lost. We all know how much he panics when he loses orientation or everything gets too much. Boku nodded determinedly. I'm taking the way towards the train station. Okay, I will go in direction of the cafe Kuroo and I study in sometimes. Kuroo stared at them, speechless. He was so glad to have them as his boyfriends. Thank you. Thank you so much. Hey, that's our job. Not to mention that Kenma alone outside at this time and with this weather is more than concerning. I'm sorry, I should have followed him immediately. You can take the blame and we can tell you how stupid it is later. Now, let's concentrate on finding our kitten. He nodded and they started the search. Not even 5 minutes in, he was already drenched to the bones. How must Kenma feel in this weather? He has been out here for hours. The guilt urged him to move faster, and he ran down every empty street. The light of his phone illuminating every dark corner and abandoned alley. But Kenma remained lost. With every second passing, his heart clenched tighter in his chest. What if he's injured? If the storm somehow led to him falling or getting hit by something? What if he got involved in an accident because he couldn't see clearly? Or the blood in his veins froze? What if someone hurt him? Like that guy at the party. Nausea overcame him and he pushed himself to go further. The air was burning in his lungs, but he didn't care. He had to make it. He had to find Kenma. Kuroo felt his breaking point approaching as his sight became blurry. He still felt lightheaded from the whole crying, and the burning in his lungs and throat seemed to have spread throughout his whole body. His rescue came in form of Kiji, whose name suddenly appeared on the screen of his phone. I found him! Akashi had been searching for what felt like forever. Kenma was nowhere near the cafe. At some point, the Ravenet was just aimlessly walking around, shaking from the cold and hoping to find any sign of his boyfriend. His muscles ached, and every cell of his body urged him to go somewhere warm and comfortable. But that just motivated him more. The thought of Kenma alone out here in the storm terrified him. Around the next corner, he entered a dark, empty park. It honestly felt like the start of a horror movie and sent shivers down his spine. An unsettling feeling spread throughout his body, and he was just about to turn around when he noticed something. The park was almost completely silent aside from the shaking leaves and pouring rain. The lights from the city didn't reach through the thick trees, and compared to before, it was almost as if this place was hidden beneath a blanket of darkness. No sounds, no lights. If Kenma was stressed out, this was the kind of place he would search for. Kenma? Akashi frantically scanned the scenery for the small blonde. And sure enough, 10 more minutes of studying the muddy ground and he found him curled up in a ball beneath a tree. Kenma! He rushed to his side. Akashi expected him to shiver, but his body was almost still. Occasionally his muscles would spasm before returning to his motionless form. Akashi was terrified. He shook him by the shoulder, and when Kenma looked up, his eyes were glossy and barely focused. He gulped. Don't worry, Kenma. I got you. Hold on, you hear me? Akashi pulled him closer while also reaching for his phone. Kenma's clothes were drenched and he needed to get them off. His body needed to warm up again, quickly. I found him. Call an ambulance, he has hypothermia. He hung up again, the phone falling from his hand as he fought to get the hoodie off. Come on, Kenma, you got this. Hold on. He threw his own jacket aside while lifting Kenma in his arms. Akashi pressed the limp body tightly to his chest, hoping to share at least a tiny bit of his body heat with the smaller. As fast as his shaking legs could manage, he ran towards the nearest street, his phone in hand. The student turned on the flashlight on his device, lifting it high in the air, as high as he could with an unconscious Kenma in his arms, to signal their location to the ambulance. When they finally arrived, he was close to collapsing himself. His body was shaken violently and his nails left marks on Kenma's arm with how tightly he was holding him. Please. Please help him. The paramedics came closer. One of them gently took Kenma from his arms. He has hypothermia. And... Hey, shh. Calm down, kid. We are here now. He's in good hands. Why isn't he shivering? He should be shivering. The paramedic placed a hand on his shoulder, leading him to the giant vehicle. Come here. We'll get you two to the hospital. You both need to warm up. Akashi was too tired to argue and allowed the man to place him on one of the seats in the back and closed the seatbelt around him. His head slumped against the wall and a ringing echoed in his ears. He could hear the voices around him getting hectic. The people seemed to blur in front of his eyes as two of them rushed to Kenma's side. Somewhere in the distance he heard the sirens and saw the blinking lights passing by the window. But his brain wasn't capable of processing it. It was so cold. Why was it so extremely cold? Even though he felt like a thick glass panel separated him from the rest, he could hear them getting louder. One of the EMTs put his hands above Kenma's chest and started pressing down. The image pierced through his mind and all of a sudden everything returned. The noise became unbearably loud as Keiji forced his body to move forward until the seatbelt stopped him. Kenma! Stay back, kid. No! 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 Kenma! He screamed, even though his throat turned sore. Even though it hurt, and he felt his head getting heavy again. No, Kenma! They arrived at the hospital and Kenma was immediately rushed inside. Hey, we need another stretcher over here. The medical staff helped to put him on the stretcher and told him to lay still. Kenma. We do what we can to help your friend. Concentrate on yourself for now. You have suffered exposure to the cold, and in the very least, mild hypothermia. He's not my friend. She helped him on a hospital bed and hooked him up to a bunch of machines, following the orders of the doctor inspecting the situation. They talked, but Akashi barely understood them. He felt an IV being put in his arm and a warm liquid filling his veins. See? This is much better. Stay calm and rest. We will discuss the paperwork later. And you can count on us. Your friend is in the best hands. My friend. She smiled sympathetically. Well, I heard you made quite a fuss about your not friend. He is. He's my partner. I love him. Tears started flowing freely from his tired eyes. I love him so much. A strangled sob escaped his throat. The nurse's smile faded, and she squeezed his hand reassuringly. We'll do our best. Rest now. I can give you the details when you wake up. She left. But Akashi couldn't sleep. He was staring at the ceiling without even seeing it. The events played on repeat in his mind. Kenma's body, still and lifeless on the floor. The blurred images of both of them shivering in the cold in the middle of the street. And the paramedic trying to bring him back. He tried putting everything together in a way that made sense, but his mind wouldn't comply. A silent flow of tears decorated his cheeks. Kiji! Kuroo whisper-yelled his name as he stormed in. Bokuto following closely behind. Both of them had fluffy blue blankets hanging from their shoulders, and judging by the stern look one of the nurses gave Kuroo, he wasn't really supposed to get up yet. At least sit down. I understand that you are worried about your partner, but we can't have you pass out. He placed 2 chairs next to Kiji's bed and guided Kuroo firmly to one of them. Kuroo barely paid attention to the poor man. His eyes were fixated on Akashi. And no more apologizing. You need to rest, and a tirade of self-blame hardly qualifies as rest. Kuroo looked down, but nodded. Good. You two look out for him a bit. He needs it. He gave them a warm smile that felt like it could heal the hypothermia at once before leaving. You heard him. Bokuto took the place next to Kuroo and let his head slump against the other's shoulder while crossing his arms. Kuroo, he is right. It's not your fault, fight or not. You couldn't know what would happen. His gaze slowly shifted towards them. The words sounded very thin, but he wasn't capable of more. Part of him acknowledged his bottom lip quivering as the older leaned closer and wiped the tears away. The former Sado leaned into his touch as more tears replaced the old ones. He dwelled in the reassuring heat radiating from Kuroo's and Bokuto's bodies, who had changed positions to rest his head on Akashi's thighs. I love you. He forced the words out between sobs. We love you too. Bokuto smiled softly at him and placed a gentle kiss on his hand. Did they know? About what happened? How critical the situation actually was? He looked at both of them and concluded that the answer to all of the above was no. But one look at Kuroo's exhausted expression was enough to convince Kiji that now was not the time to tell him. And he dared to wish that he never had to know. Kenma would survive and recover, and everything would be fine. No harm done. right? Thank you for watching till the end. I hope you enjoyed it, even though it was really angsty. But I mean, that's kind of what my channel is about, so... yeah, I will upload the second part very soon, hopefully. I'm not going to spoil the ending yet, but in case there's anything, I will of course put warnings to the next part. Yeah, but for now, if you liked it, please consider leaving a like because it helps my channel grow, and of course consider subscribing so you won't miss the second part. And now have a wonderful day.
We would wake up close, stay up late and watch the sky so you could see the snow. In another life, it's more than fantasy, so I wouldn't have to fall asleep